Hello, my name is Daly Hannenberg, and today I'll be reviewing the book The Hatfields and McCoys by Otis K. Ross. This book was published on December 31st, 1982 by the University Press of Kentucky. As you can tell, I read this book on my Kindle, so there's the cover of the page, and this is what it would look like if you were to buy it on the Kindle, and it is free if you get the Kindle Unlimited. This book discusses a lot of what life was like for the Hatfields and the McCoys. It goes into great detail as to why they were feuding and what society was like for them during the time. It goes into the before, the during, and the after of the Civil War for them. It also gave a lot of detail as to why they were out for revenge on each other. There was a lot of territorial disputes and just a lot of factual information as to what led up to the big feud for them. I read this entire book cover to cover, every word on every page. When it comes to reviewing this book, and if I would recommend it, I'm very 50-50 on it. Now, me personally, this was not my type of book. I do not enjoy sitting down reading about all the negativity and the fussing and the fighting that came in this book. And I would say that if you enjoy this kind of stuff, this book is for you. But for me, I enjoy more inspirational and happy and just more fictional things. The vocabulary in this book was not difficult to read. It was pretty moderate. I would say a bunch of tier 2 words, nothing crazy. It was only hard to read just due to staying engaged. There were 16 chapters out of 162 pages, so it wasn't lengthy chapters. It was just more staying engaged with the book and truly understanding what life was like for the Hatfields and the McCoys. It was a good story. The story behind it was really good. It was full of detail, and you really got a good aspect of what life was like for them. But for me, it was hard to want to read this because it was very gruesome. Outside of the fighting and all the feuds and the war, it was still very gruesome in some details that we won't explain on here, but that's really what I didn't like about the book. I didn't like how it was just very gruesome, and I feel like the book was kind of repetitive in some sense. Like, I feel like we just continued to add someone else getting mad and somebody else getting mad and somebody else getting mad. So that was what was really difficult for me to read about this book. But overall, like, if you enjoy this kind of book, this book is for you. But like for me, it wasn't my kind of book. I built my lesson plan on this book because of the post-Civil War effects. This will be good for 5th grade, and it tells a lot of details as to what really happened after the Civil War and what it was like for these people. So the inspiration from this book made me want to teach what life was really like, the hardships and the politics and what really happened with people, because there were more fighting outside of the Hatfields and McCoys. This is just one of the most famous stories you get from the fighting after the Civil War, but there were a lot more. So, to dive into what was really happening, this would be a good lesson for my students to gain full aspect of what life was like and the hardships people faced and how politics and policies and everything was just so different for people. And I like to take that and turn it into, let's educate ourselves on these things and let's look into it. And let's have a good look at what life was like before, after, and maybe even some of the now things, because to this day we're still facing some hardships. So, I mean, obviously not like the Civil War with the Hatfields and McCoys and all that good stuff, but it would be a good thing to really look into what life was like. So 3 strategies that I would like to talk about are compare and contrast. So the first one would be specifically, let's focus on what life was like before the Civil War and what life was after the Civil War. So this would be like a good little activity where you can partner up and have one student discuss what life was like before and what life was like after for another student to discuss. The next strategy I would like to use is a little research with a mock Reconstruction era newspaper. Reconstructive era newspapers were big back then, because they would use those to persuade people with different politics and policies, and, to try to get people to lean more towards one direction, because it was really hard to fact check those things. So with that being said, people would believe all of this print in front of them. So it'd be good for students to truly write one of these mock Reconstruction era newspapers and see what they were all about. And the next one I would like to use the strategy would be Modern Civil Rights Issues Exit Ticket. So, as before, we would discuss what life was like after the Civil War. And we will find things in our current life that maybe kind of reflect on those and how it's kind of gotten better in some sense for these rights and these issues, because as the world progresses, things change. So this would be a good talk for us to sit down and figure out like some modern civil rights acts and how it's changed from the Civil War as to how we push for things now. So those are some strategies I would like to use, because it would open up some critical thinking and, reflect on what life was like and what it's like now.